look at this photo. Does it take you back to a different time? Do you remember where you were when you first saw this? Or how about this photo? You still lived in the same house when you first saw this. Or maybe you were old enough to fully experience this one. Or maybe out of all these photos, your favorite is this one. And to that I say,
yeah, Mr. President, yep, the shapeshifter is over there. You can shoot him right now. As a kid, I always paid attention to the overall aesthetic a game menu had. I was blessed to own a decent amount of consoles growing up, so it was pretty cool seeing different companies develop their own style in their menus as the years went by. A lot of the older menus had this way of transporting you to a completely different world just by using some really minimal sounds and graphics. Now we're in our 9th generation of gaming consoles, and I can honestly say that these menus, they're pretty bad. Why is this? What made the gaming menu so memorable and unique? What development choices made these consoles nowadays look the same? And to be honest, is this a video where I hyperfixate on something as odd as video game menus? Well, if you stick around, you can find the answer to most of those questions. But for the last one, yes, this is a hyperfixation video.
Whatever happens, happens.
The PlayStation 2 is probably one of the most iconic gaming menus of all time. It really goes to show that you don't need a lot in frame in order to create this unique presence for a gaming menu. You just need to know a little knowledge on how our brains work, you know? The console boots up with this powerful piano chord echoing through all the corners of your screen. And while this is happening, you are being dragged down past these white pillars, which we will get into, down into the dark abyss. And then the menu comes into vision, and there's 2 options to choose from in the menu, and then these spinny white orbs. That's it. That's all there is so far. Yeah, I don't know what you're expecting. This console came out before Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man, but the charm of this menu really only comes alive when you listen to the sounds in the background. Loud, abrasive winds, crazy waves crashing down. You're no longer in your living room. You're at the beach. You're sitting by the cove, looking into the deep blue ocean with the horizon connecting the black pitch sky. Or this is another idea I've been workshopping. You're deep down into the depths of the ocean. So far down, in fact, that neither sunlight or the fact that your mom has been calling you for 10 minutes that dinner is ready will reach you. And the only source of light are these orbs. You know, it kind of reminds me of that nightmare fuel fish from Finding Nemo. I can't remember what it's called. It's anglerfish. That was it, anglerfish. And these orbs of light are your guide in the darkness. And the sounds these orbs make as you toggle through the menu, it's comforting. It is not that deep. Guy, come on, man. How else am I supposed to make it interesting? Of course I have to waffle a bit. The other feature I wanted to talk about is the system configuration. It had this odd spinning wheel of glass shards and also these glass cubes. That's all it is on the surface. But what if I told you that they aren't just shards? What if I told you that these glass shards are just an abstract clock? And the glowing one is the hour hand. This might not be crazy to you, but considering the amount of hours I spent here as a kid, the fact that I'm finding out about this now on Reddit is... yeah, it was tough, man. I had to question if I was stupid as a kid. I don't know. How did I not see this? And remember that really unimportant, ununique intro as you fly through these white pillars? All those white pillars represent something. Each of those white pillars represent runtime on each save file you have on your PlayStation. Having only, a couple files will create an intro like this. But having a PlayStation that's full to the brim of memory, you get this. And as you zoom in, you realize they're not just simple towers. They got little grids and circuit boards on them. It's so weird that this is so detailed. Crazy to me. I know this might not be that deep, but they put so much detail into something I've seen 1,000 times before. It's maddening. It's weird because Sony had a system that needed every little bit of memory in order to run games efficiently and run like at all. I know everybody here had a PlayStation initially that didn't even have a memory card. You had to buy a memory card. So they didn't have much memory or RAM to spare on fancy graphics or sounds. And yet they were able to make something that is widely agreed upon as one of the most iconic menus of all time. Now with way more computing power at their disposal, I can't wait to see what the PS3 has to hold for us. Yeah, this is kind of booty, I can't lie. The PS3 starts off with this opening chord of a violin symphony as a sine wave comes into view. And that's really it. Yeah, so I had a whole section written out for this, but I realized halfway through I was kind of just hyping it up so I wouldn't annoy that 10-year-old self that couldn't see any fault with his gaming system because, you know, it's part of my childhood, but this is kind of mid. Utility-wise, this is probably the best it's gonna get. The XMB style of the PS3 categorizes every single item into very defined sections. Being the console that killed the DVD player, it was used as a media player, a gaming console, a place where we stored videos, a internet browser when my mom took my phone away from me. But graphics aside, the fact that there's no music, that's a fumble, bro. Sony, how did you let this precede this? However, this menu saving grace was the fact that you could customize his whole menu into themes. You know when YouTubers used to promote the idea that you could customize your browser to look the way you want and sound the way you want with the power of Opera GX? Yeah, this was basically that before that existed. You could choose to completely change how your menu looked based on various PlayStation titles like Little Big Planet, Mod Nation Racers, and Fat Princess. Shout out to you if you know what that is. The next feature was also an acquired taste, but I personally loved it. You could hover over any of the gaming discs you had installed, and after a few moments, you would see a cinematic that would play in the background. I can understand how this could be very obnoxious at one point, but personally, I remember hovering over Assassin's Creed and the cinematic and music would play, and I closed my eyes getting ready to go to war with Ezio, and the lady would come in the background going, you know, pretty cool. I was a weird kid. Overall, while I still have a lot of nostalgia for it, and there are some notable features, this design is not that good. Average at best. Sony, you dropped the ball with this one. Which is unfortunate because Sony's incestual brother picked up that ball, smashed it in the back of the net, and sent it straight into the stratosphere. I decided I'd ask someone who loves obsessing over what 99.99% of people don't care about to speak about this. Take it away.
Hey, what's up? It's me, your favorite shitty internet roommate. And on my channel, we love talking vibes and atmospheres in video games. And there's not really quite anything that gives me the same atmosphere as this. This startup screen is fucking otherworldly. It's like you're watching a fucking science experiment go wrong before you boot up, like, I don't know, like Fusion Frenzy or something. I just love how extra and full of personality this is. Don't get me wrong, minimal can be done right, but I'm just sick and tired of this trend of like literally anything, like logo brands, UI, like just getting more minimal and bland. Like, nah, be fucking extra, like this shit. It makes me feel like I'm not just turning on my system, I'm entering another dimension. The codes, the numbers, and then looking at the actual UI, which is fucking green, like really fucking green. Like it's like Mountain Dew or like Vault energy drink. Do you remember Vault energy drink? It's like a soda and an energy drink. Bro, it was really good, but it was probably killing my like 10-year-old heart at the time. What I really like about specifically this UI and the PS2 is they give this feeling that I can't really explain. It's like the vibe and the way it's designed, it's not just like your typical dashboard and UI. It feels like it's showing you what it would look like inside the console. You get what I'm saying? As if they're trying to mimic what the soul of the console looks like. This is way too fucking deep. Point is, there's a lot of personality and charm here, and I fuck with that. It makes you feel like this big ass machine in your living room isn't just a gaming console, but it's like a sci-fi futuristic machine from like space or something. I mean, just listen to the sound effects of the UI. Ooh, it's again, every time I hear that, I feel like I'm like I don't know, like choosing the coordinates of like a laser beam. I don't know what fucking astronauts do besides acting. And even the background noise feels like the sound of like ambient space. And again, going back to personality, going back to charm, there's even this Easter egg where if you just leave it idle for a little bit, you will hear audio recordings from the fucking Apollo mission. And I live for little details like that. That is my shit. Because what all that does is it creates this sense of atmosphere. Once again, another cool ass intro. Definitely not as like, you know, unique and like sci-fi, definitely more corporate, but still vibey, still cool. And it's like forever iconic for a reason. So the 360 UI and like dashboard and everything went through a few changes. The original setup was just like these blades, which was like very simple, very intuitive, very easy to understand. And I know there's a community that loves the blades. They live by the blades, that the blade, they study the blade. But my personal nostalgia for the 360 has to be the UI and dashboard of the NXE update. Look at this thing. It's more of this row system. I like the color palette. I like the sound effects. Like listen to this like exit sound effect. Like, it's definitely a little more clunky and not as intuitive as the blades, but here's the thing. You can make an avatar. I love that shit. If I can make a character, I'm fucking hype. I'm wet. I'm hard. I always made it my mission to try to drip out my character, and they're better, in my opinion, they're better than me's because I can actually customize them and make them their own personalized outfits that I can even get more of from playing certain games and buying things from shops. And it just made it so cool when like you have your friends list and they all have their own little avatars with their own drip. It's just, I like making characters and dressing them up. What can I say? I don't know. Call me a JoJo fan or something. Oh, and real quick, I almost forgot. You gotta talk about the profile like avatar gamer pictures. If they got the cool beanie guy with the bubblegum, probably a really cool chill person usually you want to hang out with. If you have the panda or the monkey, usually a menace. I've noticed that's where you get the audio message where they inform you how often they spend time with your mom. Anime girl, weeb, kind of obvious. And you know what, actually keep in mind, the smiley face is tough. The smiley face could just be a regular schmegular kind of guy. You know, maybe he's wholesome, maybe he's sweet. But sometimes, you never know. Sometimes the smiley face could be the panda in disguise. You know what I'm saying? And that's all I really remember with these. But I always thought these were so iconic. I don't know why. Like, I can't think of other, like, stock gamer profiles that have become as iconic and recognizable as these. And of course, there would be more updates to the 360's UI and even, you know, eventually the Xbox One and so on. But to me, when I think of those sweaty Mountain Dew filled gaming nights getting teabagged in Halo 3 by my good friend Bubba, this is what I think of. While I would say that newer consoles' UIs are typically a lot more, you know, convenient and streamlined, I definitely think they have lost the vibe and charm and just personality of these older ones. Now I feel like most UIs just kind of just look like, you know, your Netflix or some like, I don't know, regular schmegular online shop or something. I'm a big fan of aesthetics and just presentation. And I just feel like as gaming has become more and more corporatized and, you know, like capitalism, everything just kind of like grays out into this more bland, streamlined kind of look. Everything kind of slowly transitioning into like the essence of a basic skyscraper or like a concrete building. Look at MySpace. Personalized, fucking sick, fucking raw XD. Then Facebook. No charm, no personality, cringe. And same thing here. Look at the OG Xbox. Look at Xbox now. You need vibes. You need Thanks for listening to me yap. Make sure you subscribe to my boy right here. He's making great stuff that you don't want to miss out. My favorite video by him is this Epo video. You should watch it. It's amazing. Now I gotta go make my own vid so I can pay my bills. This has been your favorite shitty internet roommate. Thanks for having me. Peace.
Dude, you don't want to know how much this blew my child mind when I accidentally first discovered that this could even happen when booting up the console as a kid. Not to mention, kind of scared the shit out of me. Like, listen to the music and vibes here. The Nintendo GameCube might not be a console that comes to mind when you think back to console menu interfaces, right? But just as there is love for the PS2 somewhat eerie and ethereal boot-up screen and kind of entire aesthetic of what was going on over there, the GameCube basically had a similar thing going on, but just with a little bit of that Nintendo flair. Each time you swap from one section of the menu to another, or even just navigate the UI within one, the console plays these fun but kind of lighthearted and futuristic sound effects that, you know, have this very cube-centric visual feedback, right? The menu wants you to know that you are playing the game Cube, after all, not the game Sphere, not the game Rectangle. This is the goddamn GameCube. I will say, if I spent far too much time anywhere in particular with this menu, it was browsing through the storage, because it was honestly really fun to see all the little icons that each game had. I'm sure others out there also did what I used to do, where I would sit on this menu for a while, just making sure to put game files on different memory cards so that I would end up with like a single player memory card and a multiplayer card. If I was showing up to a friend's house, man, I had to make sure that I had that shit on me. We cannot be playing Smash Bros without Mewtwo. That's just wrong. There is also something incredibly satisfying about a game console's interface matching the vibe of the game that you go right into playing. Like Kingdom Hearts on the PS2 was a perfect example of this, right? Because it had that ambient wave sound in the background of the menu, which would then open right into that intro cinematic, which had that same empty, oceany, dreamlike vibe going on. And I think the GameCube has that same thing. I felt the same way when playing something like Mario Sunshine. You have this unsettling but kind of clean-cut feeling going on, but then get the Nintendo playful, blocky sound effects and all, which feels pretty similar to what Mario Sunshine has for its aesthetic. Even with the GameCube menu being so limited in actual functionality, the importance of it can't really be overstated. It's still a part of what makes the GameCube special, and the fact that I have all these deep nostalgic thoughts about a menu with only 4 options really says a lot. The simplicity can still be appreciated, and honestly, that's kind of what makes this entire generation so great. A console whose entire MO is simply being a cube that plays games still can evoke such strong feelings and emotions in ways that may or may not have been intended. And I don't know, I think that's pretty cool.
In creating DS, we've given the world's most talented game makers new tools to work with, new ways to express their imaginations, and of course, in the end, new enjoyment for all of us. DS not only changes Nintendo, it changes our industry.
And Reggie, my glorious king, how right were you? The DS was Nintendo's first venture into portable devices, and it was also the first time we got to see what I like to call the white room aesthetic for their menus. The theme had this clean, sleek vibe to it, with bevels and shaders on any item on screen. You can tell they wanted the DS to feel personal, because you could name your DS and change the color, and that was kind of it at the DS's edition. But this was revolutionary, okay? Not a lot of things were doing it at the time. It's kind of like how I can give praise to Inuyasha for building some of the blocks a lot of shonen anime stand on right now. But objectively speaking, watching Inuyasha is in comparison to the pain of if someone were to just stab you in the leg with a fork. And then with the DSi, we got the introduction to the ambient music Nintendo is so known for. A much more improved look on the finish. You can say that they started to get rid of corners, became more curved. I like this a lot. At the same time, kind of barbaric expecting me to scroll through like 100 item window horizontally with a slider. Now the top screen has an option of a random photo from your camera to be on display. Again, emphasizing the idea that this is a personal item. This is for you. Don't give it to your cousins because they'll break it and your mom won't replace it, okay? From me to you. If the portable Nintendo consoles were a Pokemon, I'd say this is like the second evolution, okay? The 1.5, you know, the one where we don't really like that much, but we're happy that it's there because we can't wait to the bigger evolution, okay? And the bigger evolution is the 3DS. What can I say that hasn't already been said? Again, much more of a smoother finish. It's a lot more clear, it's way more coherent, it's 3D, that's one thing. Compared to the competition at the time, this is the kind of console I want my mom to look over my shoulder and see that I'm playing. It just felt way more homely. Like, this is something I'd play as I put the duvet over my head and sneak playing a couple hours of this before school. I really liked how every single game you could play had a little jingle and animation at the top screen to look at. That was really fun. And honestly, at this point you can take it or leave it, but I really like how Nintendo fills up space with just stuff to do, whether it's just the pseudo games like Meme Maker or Face Raiders, or it's just going through the settings. If you're like me growing up, you got maybe 1 to 2 games a year, so you would gamify every single aspect of every gaming device you would have, and that includes calibrating your stylus and clicking it in random places. Okay, I would play that not for hours, but at least for an extended amount of time that you really should have. I don't know how else to explain this with the 3DS, but it's just fun to navigate. Look at this. But part of me almost feels like this is too much. Do you know the feeling when you're chewing on chewing gum that's so minty, that's so fresh, you end up just having to... Yeah, it's that feeling. It's a little bit too minty. It's a little bit too clean and fresh. And I do remember there was a time where I literally just turned off the home music because it was just whirring in my ears. It was annoying. If you haven't already noticed, I didn't actually go in chronological order of the Nintendo consoles coming out. The console preceding this had a different kind of presence that needed to be talked about as the last section for Nintendo. The console in question is the Nintendo Wii.
We gave you DS, a new Game Boy, and new games to play on them. And now you say you want a revolution? Well, we've got one.
As much as the GameCube left this impression of a somewhat ominous and futuristic vibe with its menu, overall, at its core, you still felt that Nintendo almost toy-like presence at the heart of what the GameCube was. The Wii, on the other hand, this is where Nintendo seemed to fully dive into the ocean that was the 2000s clean-cut, futuristic aesthetic. There's almost a complete lack of ominousity compared to anything that the previous generation of consoles had, and instead were embraced by this warm, therapeutic mix of bright, round, glossy edges and a bubbly but peaceful background song. But don't get it twisted, Nintendo still came through with that classic Nintendo feel for basically every other aspect of the console besides the home dashboard. All we gotta do is start hopping over to some of the other channels. For instance, let's take a trip over to the Wii Shop channel.
Super Mario RPG, Sonic the Hedgehog, Donkey Kong 3, Adventures of Lolo 1 and 2, King's Knight, Dig Dug, Juman Fu.
This right here is truly what the Wii's aesthetic and feel is really all about. And if that's not goofy enough for you, you have the Mii channel theme, and actually just almost every other theme that the Wii menu has. So now that I think about it, yeah, it mainly had that initial impression of being a super clean-cut and futuristic console at the forefront of what they really wanted to show off initially, but once people started digging into the other areas of the Wii, the heart of what Nintendo is all about is still there. This is supposed to be a fun experience, just to be in these menus, to be in these spaces, and a big part of that is the entire auditory and visual package that Nintendo had with the console menus. It really was that perfect mix of the bubbly Y2K gloss future thing that so many of the other products at the time were doing, but mixed with tons of that classic Nintendo charm and lightheartedness. From how fondly people look back upon the Wii, they clearly did something right. There's a complete soft spot for this aesthetic or this vibe or whatever you want to call it, right? And a lot of the games on this console also carry this vibe into their entire aesthetic as well. Wii Play, Wii Music, Wii Sports, all of these games do such a great job feeling almost seamless transitioning from loading the disc into actually playing the game. They stay true to what the rest of the Wii's menus and sounds are, and complete that console menu to game extension that just feels so magical. These are the types of details that really help leave that memorable impression of a game console. And not to sound like a Kingdom Hearts character or anything, but memories are all you have once you are past that point in your life. So when a game console leaves you full of memories that bring you joy, even in the console's menus, that console was probably pretty awesome.
However, there is actually an unsung hero in the Nintendo discography of menus that nobody talks about. This arguably was the last console in this era that got the assignment that you had to create a vibe in the menu. And the reason why no one talks about this console is because it did not sell well. Like, very badly. Like, I'm pretty sure I know one other person in my entire life who owned this console, and we are probably the two people in all of Ireland who owns it. I'm of course talking about the dark horse, the Nintendo Wii U. This might be a crazy take, but I think the Wii U's menu should get just as much recognition as the Wii's menu. Yes, the menu starts with your Mii in the middle as it zooms out and hordes of other Mii start rushing past you, going to their respective hubs on this checkered area we like to call the Mii Plaza. There's something about the way the Miis rush onto screen, all of them yapping about random things to each other, sharing art, and discussing different topics in relation to the game in question. It really nails down Nintendo's main mission statement: to put smiles on the faces of everyone we touch. If that's the case, Nintendo touched me all over when I was a kid. But the other slogan is creating universal joy for all players. So creating a hub where people of different sizes, race, shapes, colors are discussing about Nintendo. There really isn't any other comparisons to this in the gaming industry. I don't even know if these were real or fake Miis, but the fact that they were there, it just really made you feel like you were connected to a community of people across the world. All of this from a menu. I say this so honestly, but it is truly impressive that they've made a menu be a form of entertainment. We of course got a more practical menu similar to the 3DS, but bro, where I wanted to spend my time, where I wanted to click on my games, it was this hub full of all these glossy, bubbly icons. This feels like the Nintendo menu, I just wish that gaming companies would still think about people like me when making their menus. Every console after the Wii U has been atrocious in terms of their menu design. Everybody just adopted the idea that it had to be more minimal, flat, and bland, and I really don't like this at all. The same way that the early 2000s had everybody adopting this 3D graphics trend, it felt like the Illuminati just started knocking on the gaming HQ company's doors and said, this is what we're doing now. Look, I'm not really that disappointed in Xbox and PlayStation going down this route, but my goodness am I disappointed in Nintendo. The Switch menu looking like this, it feels personal. Okay, it hurts here. I felt like Syndrome from The Incredibles as I had to hurl away my confidence in Nintendo and never believe in them again. Where are the white gradients? These are not Miis. These are the off-brand Miis you were forced to eat as a kid because your mom didn't want to buy the real ones. This one console menu has more vertices and corners than the Wii, the DS, and the Wii U combined. Guy, just look at this. Guy, just look how boring this is. Brother, ew. What happened to every gaming company whittling down their menu to being zero music and just boxes? What happened to the game I love? This shift in design wasn't just happening in gaming, but tech all across the board. Corporate flat animation starts spreading across like a parasite from games to commercials to products. Look at what they did to my boy. It's no lie to say that everything we saw virtually were these 3D realistic graphics are just gone, and we just had to watch the best era of gaming menus just go and come by. And this is the part of the video where I say, I'm sorry. I lied to you. This isn't a video about ranking video game menus. I only did that to hook you in. Everything I spoke about in these XX minutes was just a prequel, a prelude to a bigger and broader topic. What I want to speak about is the aesthetic that the early 2000s decided to adopt. The design trend that took the computer graphics by storm and made my childhood look the way it looked. I'm of course talking about Frutiger Aero. Light colors, glossy surfaces, bubbles, and a lot of grass. These are the staples of what we'd call the Frutiger Aero aesthetic. A trend that came about in the early 2000s and peaked in the early 2010s. This might be the first time you've heard this term before, but you've definitely seen this style on your screen, laptop, TV, the whole shebang. After doing a little bit of research, I realized that Frutiger Aero is a lot like liminal spaces in the sense that the community just can't determine what's liminal and what's not. Like, the line is too tedious. For example, there is something called Frutiger Eco, which is the idea of technology mixing in with nature, the grass being green, buildings being intertwined with it. That should be used before Frutiger Aero. But at the same time, Helvetica Aqua Aero should be used when talking about water, not eco. And Frutiger Aurora should be used when talking about images of natural light and dynamic patterns, not eco. Frutiger Metro, also known as Flat Frutiger Aero or Vector Vomit, is more associated with the colorful 2D designs we saw in this era, not any of the above. Dark Aero, also known as Frutiger Ego. Yeah, guy. Yeah, this is stupid. It doesn't even sound like I'm naming aesthetics. It sounds like I'm naming Sonic fan characters. I say all this to say that I'm using the term Frutiger Aero very loosely in this video because I feel like you guys have the intelligence to know that this is Frutiger and this isn't. So I don't need to get in semantics about the subgenres. So put the keyboards away and enjoy the video, okay? Okay, this was the time where brands like Apple would adopt this idea called skeuomorphism with iOS 6, which is basically the design choice that makes all virtual graphics look as realistic as possible to their real-life counterparts. This was basically Apple's way for the older generation to get used to navigating virtually, but at the same time you can see the 3D glossy effect I've been talking about before is so prevalent here. The ads and commercials at this time also adopted this aesthetic, and I remember there was a time where everything on the ads just looked really squeaky clean. You guys remember that? You'd be pretty hard pressed to find any deep browns or murky earth colors during this era for ads and commercials, because everyone, and I mean everyone, felt as though it was this competition to show off the most sleek, the most clean, the most realistic design virtually. At this time, we no longer had potato PCs that could only run RuneScape or Ping. Windows at this time took a huge leap in development and then caused this whole OS system to look the way it was because of Frutiger Aero, okay? They also had the realistic backgrounds that you could customize. At this time, there were so many pictures of hyper-realistic images of nature. It's kind of like companies were saying, hey guys, we basically recreated outside so you guys don't have to go outside. We've beaten God. It's kind of ironic that technology wanted to seem as appeasing as possible, so it wanted to show off all these nature objects and then made us stay inside. This also was when the term "go touch grass" became really iconic because people just kept on looking at photos of grass on their PC rather than actually going outside. That's not true, I just made that up. And of course, since gaming was also part of the technological umbrella, hundreds of games, and I mean hundreds of games, would also adopt this aesthetic too. Of course, Nintendo games would have the most obvious examples of Frutiger Aero, but we also had games like Little Big Planet and The Blob and Portal that you can see little skirmishes of the influence of Frutiger Aero in them. I mean, the argument can be made that the reason why I like playing these games as much was slightly because of how they look, ergo Frutiger Aero. I want to end off this section by talking about a game that might be the most Frutiger, the most Aero of all time. To this day, it feels like a fever dream because I never owned it, but I used to play it at my friend's house and tell myself, wow, this game looks amazing. I kind of just want to walk around this game with my own 2 feet. This might be the bestest looking game ever. And now that I'm older, I can objectively admit to my younger self that, little buddy, you don't know how right you really were. I'm of course talking about Iron Monkey Studios' cult classic, Mirror's Edge. And also, I'm sorry, that is the last time I'm going to be using the term I'm of course talking about. I kind of realized I've spammed it a little bit too much in this video. Cue the montage. Mirror's Edge is probably the closest definition I can find to seeing what Frutiger Aero really looks like. It's truly a testament to creativity that this game was able to make such a unique environment with just little assets like buildings and scaffolding that just felt breathtaking. In the game, you play as this character named Faith, who is a parkour ninja who is part of a team called Runners. Their job is to traverse the city by rooftop, delivering items and also getting into scuffles with the police, you know what I'm saying? You know. As you can see, the government has stripped this whole city of anything colorful or unique. Anything that the government deems as dangerous or difficult to control has been completely erased or sucked from its former glory. Even the tiniest of things has the government's prints on it, as if you go through the game, you can see that the only paint cans across the map all have the little title, approved by the government. To get the overall narrative of this game, just look at the quote Faith says at the beginning. We call ourselves runners. We exist on the edge between gloss and reality. The Mirror's Edge. Guy, if that is not the most Frutiger Aero quote I have ever heard, I don't know what is. Through Faith's eyes, you can see that she doesn't see this city as this dystopian metropolis of just concrete and despair. Rather, this expansive playground of rooftops to leap over and restricted areas to explore. It's weird to say that even though most of this game is colored white, there's so much variety in the materials they use. There's so many different shades for just the concrete that really makes the whole place just pop and feel realistic. Climbing around the map, the only things that aren't white are the objects the player can use to get around. If you think about it, it really kills two birds with one stone. It kills the first stone because now players have all these subtle hints and reminders of where to go in the level, and they don't have to flood the whole screen with way markers and a HUD that's just distracting, ruining the aesthetic of the game. But at the same time, these objects being bright red and orange made the overall landscape just pop. The architecture in this game still rivals some of the games we have to this day. It really has no business still looking this good. Maybe some details like the faces of the NPCs didn't age well, but who cares? Anything nitpicky graphically about this game can just be ignored because you're too busy jumping and leaping across buildings to care that one of the NPC's faces kind of looks like it's been sandpapered. In this game, it's all about the lighting. The developers licensed a light baking engine named Beast, and a feature in Unreal Engines called Light Mask to make the game look the way it did. With these effects, the shadows and the distribution of light across the buildings would be static. No matter where you looked, no matter what angle, the shadows would stay the same, which would be a huge issue in any other game, but not this one. Because the only thing that needs to move in this game is you. Now we have stuff like ray tracing to make our environments pop way more, but Mirror's Edge had none of that. And yet, the lighting gave so much character to every vent you jumped over, every window you parkoured across, every room you entered. So I watched Jacob Geller's video on this game, and he had a really important quote that just struck out to me. Because of the lighting, every room that you enter, you can feel the temperature of the room. And that clicks with me straight away. I understand that so well. Overall, it was a freak of nature when it came out, and in 2024, it still is a freak of nature. Honestly, I think this aesthetic is pretty cool, but I think we give it a little too much credit than it deserves. Admittedly, it wasn't until the end of this script that I kind of realized that there's not a direct causality with this aesthetic with my nostalgia for this era. In fairness, this is how life looked at one point. So it's very easy to assume that this specific trend is attributed to that quality of life that you miss so much. Despite what I've seen on YouTube and on Reddit, I kind of want to push back on this idea. Here's the narrative I've kind of been seeing with Frutiger Aero. Frutiger Aero was an artist's attempt in trying to emulate what Gen Z's future would be like. Its tragedy lies in the fact that Gen Z never got to fully experience this because of climate change and a bunch of other things that the adults forgot to do. This hope that nature and technology could perfectly coexist was ripped from Gen Z's fingers. And to that I say, it's not that deep. It's really not that deep. Even skeptics can agree. The late 90s and the early 2000s brought about a big boom in technology. Companies were then striving to wow you as a customer, showing you all these 3D realistic graphics that no one has ever seen before virtually. And the reason why it declined was, just like everything else, the companies started doing too much. The technique of showing images that were realistic started to get too realistic, and everything being so bright and glossy and shiny started to get kind of tacky, which then caused this avatar energy shift where they felt like they had to replace it with flat animations, boxes, and just 2D. Ugh. I don't think I end off this video by saying this aesthetic sold us an idea of green and blue, and us as Gen Z ended up getting gray and blah, or some political statement on how nature should be treated. Rather, I think it was an interesting look into what artists do when they are given a whole new set of tools to create with. A time when we were influenced by the world and wanted to see if we could put our own spin in what we saw in nature. I mean, that's art, guys. No need to put it in a box or make 100 subgenres for it. Just appreciate what it was. A style that was poured into every aspect of our daily lives at one point. Realistically, I think what Frutiger Aero represents to me and so many others was a time when life felt brand new and exciting to be a part of. A time where things felt full and soothing rather than flat and uninteresting. I think people wanting this aesthetic back isn't just that they like the aesthetic, but it's a hope that life could go back to how it was before the expectations, the degrees, the doom and gloom you're forced to notice when you get older. But those times are never coming back. The sands of time wait for no one. And look, regardless of if you buy into that doomer take about how your current life is now, it's no lie to say that for a group of 20-something-year-olds right now, their favorite games and media of all time were made during this Frutiger Aero frenzy. And rather than link everything to this style, I'll just say it was a great memory to look back onto. Overall, guy, you don't need to categorize it into an aesthetic for it to be important. If you think the tiniest details like a menu that looks reflective is important to you, then that's cool, man. You do you. Rock on. The fact it matters to you is reason enough to talk about it. And maybe that's all you really need. What's up, boys? Thank you for making it to the end of the video. As you can see, it was a very experimental project. I worked with some YouTubers. All of their links will be in the description. It took me a while to make this video, but I'm very happy how it turned out. And the fact this is my longest video is wild because we really just talked about menus for 40-something minutes, which is crazy. But hey, that's what we do over here. If you like what you saw and you want to support me in any way, make sure to head over to my Patreon so I can continue making videos like this. With that, you get exclusive content on thoughts when I'm scripting videos and just basic content advice in general, and a bunch of other stuff that's worth your money once I think of it. Regardless, thank you for letting me yap into your ear for 40-something minutes about a hyperfixation I have. I'll see you guys in the next video.